Hello, my name is NickS and welcome to my Zenith project presentation. For the animation Zenith project, I decided to focus on something that we've been doing as seniors. In our senior year as animation students, we focused on 3D animation. We also got a new teacher, the wonderful Mr. Cho, who specializes in 3D animation. My 3D animation project ended up being Vroid, which is this character you see here, and then going one step beyond and recording it with live action software, VC Face, thanks to my peer Ian, who suggested it, and then recording it all with OBS, which is how you are seeing this presentation right now. The first step into doing all of this, of course, was to come up with the idea for a character. I chose to model my character off of Senko, which is an anime character from an anime that I was watching around the time that I decided to start this project. The first modification I did was to, or the first thing I did rather, was to take a base model, such as the male character you see in the corner of your screen right now, me giving the presentation, and then to modify it into eventually what this is. I started with the face, namely the eyes. If you see here, the original eyes were these rather. Come on. Admittedly, it does look better, but at this point in time I was still trying to model my character off of Senko, so used her eyes. It's a little bit flatter because, you know, it was an anime, so very flat coloring style in that anime. I also added some blush to the cheeks. I did this by exporting the layer from Vroid. I mean, you can paint it here, but it's a little bit easier to do it in other programs. So I exported it to Photoshop, edited the flat layer in Photoshop, and then imported it back into Vroid. After I'd done the eyes and face, I moved on to the hair. Working on hair in Vroid is an interesting process. You start by creating something like, in this case, you can use a preset or a freehand group, which is what I ended up choosing. All of these here are various freehand groups, so you can have multiple. You start by sort of outlining the skeleton that you want the hair paths to follow. You can see here what exactly that skeleton does. So it's a 3D layer, so that way, you know, your hairs just aren't all directly flat against your character's head. You can do things like creating pigtails, huge variety of hairstyles that you can do with this. There are, of course, some limitations, but it's better than nothing. Making the hair is a little bit interesting in that you can sort of preset your hair strand when you brush it on, like this. You can set thickness, color, the texture, width, depth, all of that stuff. You can edit the shape of the hair strand with some pathing stuff. There's also presets for that. After you've brushed on your hairs and all that, and you sort of complete your hair, if you were to just export your character as is, when your character moved their head, you know, the hair would be like as if it was like rock solid. As you can see in the character that I have now, you have to sort of mess with them a little bit to give it some realistic physics. Do that by adding something called bones. Bones act as individual objects that sort of react to movement and have realistic physics. And you can apply this to a number of layers or individual strands of hair. So as you can see in it here, separated by the different colors, I have one bone here, one bone here, one bone here, so on and so forth. For the individual groups, you can edit things like the number of joints that the hair will bend at, the fixed point, the stiffness of the hair, so how much it bounces, gravity, you know, how flat it hangs when it's not moving, or how realistic it sticks to your original drawing and padding. One thing I noticed with long hair is when you are actually moving around, there is a chance for it to glitch and, you know, sort of phase in and out of your head. You can see I don't have a problem with that on the male character, due mostly to the fact that he has short hair, so you don't really have to worry about it falling into your face. after I finished with the head, pretty much, I worked on the body, so I used this wonderful thing, I guess you would call it, website called Booth. It's like a lot of pre-made stuff on here, so if you're not a very good artist or if you're new to the program, both of which are me, you can find some simple stuff like costumes, hair, so on and so forth for your character. I took one and modified it to suit Senko. I picked this one because it sort of has that traditional, shrine maiden-y type look, which matched the actual character Senko. You can use things, I forgot to mention this earlier, sliders, almost anywhere, character, you can change the neck height, eye width, depth, size, all of that. And you can actually input values beyond the maximum that the slider can do, so you can go, bigger than what it might suggest. So you can have huge, bobblehead or really long legs or things like that if you want to create a more interesting or, sort of comedic character. One thing that I wasn't happy with was when I applied the costume, I wanted to get rid of the bra strap because it was a different color and different width to the dress and sort of unnecessary. You can see here that there's sort of a line, because when you go into the texture, you gotta keep in mind that it's flat, right? And you paint on it with the intention of applying it onto a three-dimensional figure. So it's a little bit hard to tell what goes where. I didn't realize till after doing the project that you can, in fact, paint directly on the character, which would have made this a little bit easier, but as I mentioned, the Vroid art is sort of a little bit rudimentary in blending and all the things you can do, particularly when you compare it to something more advanced like Photoshop. After I'm finished with my character, you export it and put it into something that can track your face through a camera and apply it to your character, like VC Face. As I mentioned earlier, this was recommended to me by my peer, Ian, because when I was looking for them, I found ones that are, like $60 and they can do like hand and full body tracking. But this one's free, which is great for a student like me who doesn't want to spend $60. Has facial tracking, it has mouth and eye tracking too. It is a little wonky right now because I have a mask on and that seems to mess up the blinking and of course messes up the mouth tracking. But overall, it's pretty accurate. You can assign the camera, you can assign the character, so if you have multiple Vroid files of different characters, you can pick which one you want. You can set up sort of facial expressions in Vroid, and because VC Face was made such that it would work with Vroid, a lot of the stuff that you can do in Vroid transfers over into VC Face. Another great thing with VC Face was that it was built to work with capture software, in particular OBS, that I'm using right now. So you can see I sort of have my screen that I'm recording, and I have my character from VC Face, that you can overlay onto it. And one way you could do this is using a display capture, so I could capture exactly what I see on VC Face with this texture you can see here. But VC Face also has a way for you to use it as a live camera and import it specifically in such a way to OBS, such that it has that clear background and a lot of modifications you can make to make them work well together. This brings us to the OBS software itself, the screen capture software. You can record, you can stream, you can use this as a virtual camera, you can set up a bunch of stuff here. You have your scenes and multiple sources that you can overlay and set up however you want. There's a lot of settings, so you can do audio, you can do different video files depending on how you want to set out. You can do things like bitrate, video quality, all of that jazz. All to create a project like this one. Thanks.